Hey guys, so welcome back to the Rach Active podcast. My name is Rach J. I'm your host. I'm a coach and the founder of Core 30. I am really excited to have the lovely Lola Berry on the show today. Welcome, lovely.
Thanks for having me. We were hoping to do this in person, weren't we?
We were, but unfortunately we are recording this obviously during the COVID crisis, and we're obviously in Melbourne. Well, you're in Torquay, but we are all locked down, so we can't really go anywhere. But I do, before we get started, want to kind of give you a little spiel and intro because, I mean, I feel like most people know who you are, but just in case you don't know who Lola is.
It's okay if you don't.
I kind of would think if you don't know who Lola is and you're in the health and wellness space, I don't know where you've been living if you're living in Melbourne. So Lols is one of Australia's leading nutritionists. She's also a yoga teacher and an author of like a gazillion books, Lols. I was looking it up and I'm not going to name all of them, but I will name some of them because I think it's worth noting your nice body of work. So the 2020 Diet, the Happy Cookbook, Lola Berry's Summer Food, Food to Make You Glow. The Yoga Body was your last one, wasn't it? The latest one. Yeah. So that was the last one. There's a whole bunch more. So you can Google Lols and check out all her books because they're all amazing. You're also the founder of Lola Coffee, which is your new little passion project.
Sipping on it now.
Nice. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But basically you're very well respected and known in the health and wellness space, and I'm so grateful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for giving your time to chat to me today.
Oh, I'm so glad we could make it happen. It's actually like, I think when we knew we were going back into lockdown, and I know you've got it much harder than me. We're in stage 3, you're in stage 4. But I was like, do I pull the pin on my own podcast? And then I was like, no, I'm just going to use it as an opportunity to just go after people that felt like a bit hard to get. So it's been nice as like, it's taken me a while to like accept that we're recording online and stuff, but now I'm kind of pumped by it, like how cool that we can create content in this time.
Yeah, it's so amazing. It's such a great opportunity. That's what I need to say as well, is that you're also the host of your own podcast called Fearlessly Failing. So you can check that out as well, guys. But we were just reflecting on when the last time we saw each other, but the last time we actually had a proper chatskis like this, I was looking it up and doing a bit of digging. It was 6 years ago when we did this kind of thing. So we did a little chat for a site I was running at the time called Eat Beautiful. And, you know, there were a lot of topics that we both, I feel, are really passionate about talking about. So I'm really excited to kind of see how they might have evolved and changed over the last 6 years. So really exciting.
I can't believe that was 6 years ago. I still remember that day. I still remember what I was wearing. I still remember.
That pink top.
Yeah, the pink top, and I had these leggings that had like
the palm tree leggings, yoga. I remember too. Actually, that was fun. It was a fun little interview that we did, which is really cool.
Yoke. We both love yoke as well.
Yeah, we love yoke, and obviously, back then it was power living.
Oh my goodness, it was too.
Yeah. So it was a long time ago. But firstly, I want to check in because obviously we're going through this crazy global pandemic. Who would have thought 2020 would be, you know, bringing us this crazy madness? But how are you going in terms of your mental health, your emotional health? You feeling okay?
Like we just touched on, I think being on the surf coast, being in Torquay, so we relocated here second week of March, like before any lockdowns kind of kicked. You could taste it in the air though.
Yeah,
like I don't know if you remember, coming. You'd be at the coffee shop and there'd just be people talking about cases and the global impact. And I was just like, and I said to Dad, I was actually meant to be on a flight to Los Angeles and it all blew up in my face. And I said to Dad, I was like, can I just go down to the beach house for a week and just kind of like reset? Because I was really anxious. And he goes, of course, there's no one in it, just go for it. And I haven't left. A weekend, literally, I came with a weekend bag. And Matt had to go back to Melbourne, my boyfriend, a couple of times to kind of like pick up stuff, do coffee stuff, and I'd get him to swing past Dad's place and just pack another bag for me. But I'm still just living with like a few pairs of yoga pants. I just have got like 4 jumpers on rotation.
That's all you need though, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. It's been freeing. I mean, I'm really lucky. I'm really pro having a therapist. And so I've kept a therapist the whole way through this whole pandemic. I've been seeing him for 3 years, probably 3.5 now. And so we do it via FaceTime now. So having a therapist really helped me unpack all the highs and lows, especially at the beginning. Now we've kind of got a routine, like I'm here with my boyfriend.
Yeah. Because that's one of the things that I feel like a lot of people, obviously it's this huge thing that's going on where, you know, feelings and emotions like anxiety, depression, stress is being brought to the surface. And even if it's not a conscious thing, it's something that we're all experiencing. And so dealing with these particular emotions may not be something that people have faced head on, because, you know, sometimes you go through life and you just kind of think that's normal. But now, because we're in this kind of situation, we have to face what we're feeling, I guess, in a way. And I know that you're a huge mental health advocate. It's something that you speak about a lot in your work. And, you know, I think, you know, you have found some tools that work for you, like having therapy. But for people who don't really know what to do, you know, they're struggling, because I feel like, especially in Melbourne, there are a lot of people struggling mentally with this whole situation. You know, what would be your sort of suggestions? What kind of things do you think will help them?
I was actually talking to my therapist on Tuesday about this, because I was like, dude, because he's in Melbourne, and I was like, what the hell? And I'm like, and he goes, I feel so sorry for people that are about to start a relationship online with a therapist. And he's like, it's a relationship. So he's like, you've got to have trust. You've got to feel comfortable opening up. And he's like, the difference between you and I is he said, we've got such a foundation that has been set from 3 years of weekly visits. So like if I'm doing a FaceTime session with him and I cry, I don't really care, because I'm like, he's seen me cry 1,000,000 times in his space. But I imagine that'd be so confronting if you were doing it online for the first time. And but I mean, I think like some help is definitely better than none. And my therapist said, you know, like some of my clients have said they only will see me if it's in person, and he has to take their temperature beforehand. And, you know, and I was like, I'm really happy with it being online, because it means that like I'm in my safe space. I'm not breaking any protocols driving. There's a big block between Melbourne and Geelong.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Road check. And so for Melburnians that are in it, like far out, I feel for you guys. But I'd be like, for me, I'm a OCD person, and I have a feeling you might be too.
Just a little.
Yeah. Are you Virgo?
No, I'm not. I'm a Gemini.
But that means you can slip in and out of it.
In and out. Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, for me to be ritual and routine, I'd be like, right, I'm going to move my body this way today. Whether that be your hourly walk that you're allowed to do, whether that be you go for a jog, whether that be you do like today. I'm recording a few podcasts back to back today. So for me, it's going to be an afternoon yoga that I'll just do in my lounge room. And I think if you just set yourself these little kind of like acts of self-care, like as soon as we knew we were going into stage 3, Boss and I drove into Warm Ponds, which is like close to Geelong, and just picked up like I got heaps of like beauty face masks, bath salts, candles, like all this self-love stuff and self-care stuff that makes you feel good even when you feel shit. So I think it's about like having these little tools and little things that give back to you. But I also think this is the time to like face what you're feeling, like journal, get clear on your goals, get clear on your values. Like it's making me, for the first chunk of this, like I got really afraid of like, I've got some pretty big goals and I'm like, shit, I'm 34. Like I'm missing the window now. Like if I waste too much time, and I've never been afraid of my age ever because I study acting.
Yes, we're going to get to that. Don't worry.
but I'm 10 years older, you know, than all the kids in the class. And 10 years is a lot of like wisdom and living, and you have a sense of self-understanding that you don't have early 20s.
That's right, yeah.
And so you and me have studied at the same school, haven't we?
Yeah, that's right, we have. Yeah. I'm so excited to talk to you about this.
Yeah, but it's confronting because as an actor, you'll know this, but like you've kind of, as a female actor, you've got a window for working in television and film. Like it's really limited, whereas in the wellness world, there's no limits. Like you can ride and and I'd never faced this like finite like timeline that felt like it was like burning away, and I was like, shivers. And so that's what I've really grappled with at definitely the beginning. And that's what my therapist has just been my non-negotiable, because he's like, let's honestly talk about this. And I'll be like, I'm dreaming of snakes, and he's like, that's because you're not facing a fear, let's talk about that. So therapy would be
your number one. It's definitely, I mean, I've definitely seen a therapist over the years, and I do value therapy as well. So I feel like, well, for me, I like to talk. So to get things out and be able to air those things with a professional who's trained, psych, it's definitely helpful. But, you touched on also having like a routine, and that's brought you some stability through this period of time. So, having your daily movement, doing your journaling, and having work set up, or something that you can focus your attention on, I feel like is which is all the things that you've just, sort of said.
And you know what? You're never going to get this time back. This is never going to happen again in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Like this will be the war, I imagine. Like we're living in history right now. This will be the thing we tell our grandkids about. And we're like, oh, when I was 30, I went through this thing. And it's like you'll never get this time back. So like I keep thinking, far out, how lucky am I? I'm in Torquay with my beautiful boyfriend. He's got his headphones in so he can't hear that I just said that about him. But he's sitting across from me. But like we will walk down at sunset and just put our feet in the ocean and watch the sunset. Like we would never have had this chance to really like slow down and have really honest conversations like about kids and about marriage and about like all these big kind of like, I guess, hallmark things that you tick off during your life. It's been a beautiful gift, but mainly the gift to slow down, which I don't know about you, but I'm not really good at that.
Well, I definitely think that that's one thing that this whole thing is forcing all of us to do, is just to slow down, sit with ourselves. We're free from distractions, and that includes, I mean, some of us are still working, which is amazing, but we definitely have more space in the day to be able to take time for ourselves and sit with ourselves. So I definitely think that, it's almost like you're forced to now incorporate this type of pace into your life, because this is just the way life is, right? And so I think it's been a really amazing opportunity for me. I've definitely been very reflective, and like you said, you're having honest conversations with people, things that you may not have wanted to face before or talk about before or express before. You're expressing all these emotions. You're also understanding who and what is important to you, because it's really like the kind of state gov restrictions with only the essentials. It's essential, kind of across the board, not just go out and get your daily shopping, but what's essential for you in your life.
And are you noticing that with relationships too? Like there are certain 100%. Friends I'm like, it's time to call Bill. It's time to call Andrea. Like I've got this, like it's almost like the friends that I always loved, but I've got even closer to those really core, close ones. Like even my dad, I'm FaceTiming my dad all the time. And like, you start to kind of like almost nourish and feed those relationships that were already probably good, but you start to realize how lucky you are to have those people in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being grateful is one of the things, practicing gratitude is one of those things that has become more prominent. I mean, I always used to do that, but more so now. But like you were saying, it's like the people that you always had, as part of your core circle, your inner circle, it becomes even clearer how important to you they are. And then things that are unnecessary start to fall away, which, that in itself can also be another thing that people are facing as well, is loss and grief around, things falling away, things that we can't do. Also people that you may not be seeing, but also the life that we used to know, because life will never be the same again after all of this. We don't know what it's going to be like. So it's been a very, I feel, cleansing period of time, to be honest.
Totally. And anytime you feel stuck, just remember this will never happen again. I don't think you'll get this time to just be with yourself and figure out yourself and get clear with what matters. Like I feel like I've got so clear on my goals, and I've got this like sense of resolve that I might have kind of like let wane, especially like I had a few yucky years, like my early 30s, like 31, 32 were just yuck and just shit heartbreak, didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Shit work stuff. Like it was just hurdle. Whereas now I'm like, oh, I feel so clear.
Don't you feel like what I'm finding is as you get older and as you get to know yourself more, you feel great for knowing yourself better and having that self-awareness, but you also realize how much there is that you don't know. It's like this weird like juxtaposition of like, I know myself so much better. I'm pretty solid in who I am, but yet there is so much stuff that I do not know. And that to me, that just blows my mind, really.
A really cool quote, I was listening to a podcast with Hugh Jackman the other day. And so him and his wife, I think her name's Deb Lee Finesse, every morning they sit together, no matter what's going on. They live in New York and they read to one another. Like that's their half an hour morning ritual. They'll read and they'll read a piece of poetry, a play. And he was like, I stole this from Sir Patrick Stewart. So he's like off... not the Marvels. He's like off Star Trek back in the day, and he's like one of the OG kings of.
He does a lot of Shakespeare. Yeah, Shakespeare.
He's to Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And he's doing a sonnet a day. He reads a sonnet a day on his Instagram. I highly recommend it. I'm not into Shakespeare, but man, he's just wonderful to watch. He'll be like shelling peas for dinner, and he's like, "Oh, hello there. It's time to read our sonnet." It's amazing. Anyway, he's the one that taught Hugh Jackman that, and he said when he got to about 60, he was like, oh, my God, I'm not going to be able to read everything I want to read in my lifetime. And so he sets his alarm every day so that he can read for an hour a day or something, some amazing amount of time. And for me, like I'm like, oh, far out, how lucky I'm hearing this at this age that I'm at. Yeah. So I really tried, like even this morning when you text me and you're like 10 minutes till our call, I was like, great, I'll start reading my new play. And so...
which one is that, Lols? Tennessee Williams?
Yeah, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
I haven't read it, but I've seen part of some bits of in-scene study, you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah. No, and I was just like, I'm trying to read like a couple of at the moment I'm in a few different study groups. I'm trying to read a couple of plays a week. I've probably got my plate a bit full if I'm honest. I'm doing accent study and I'm doing full-time studies at 16. So I'm a bit like, oh God, but it's good.
There's a lot of stuff to learn in. I want to come back to acting because I feel like there's a lot of stuff in there that we're going to talk about, but I wanted to get to quickly, like, so people are finding in ISO, I think one of the biggest problems is motivation to move. Yeah. Secondly, staying healthy and eating healthy. Now you're a nutritionist, so, you know, this is your kind of like area of expertise, and I feel like a lot of people are snacking a lot, they're gaining weight, or they're, you know, whatever it is, they're having issues with maintaining their eating routine, really. What do you reckon is a good way to approach eating during this period of time?
You're going to laugh, but like I'm that person. Like Boss and I are like, shit, we're buying another bottle of wine. Like, you know, and I'm like queen of the snacks, queen of the...
I love snacking. Love snacking.
Just drop the guilt. It's totally fine. Like the reality is we're in uncharted waters mentally. So for me, it would all come down to mental health again. Like I would just direct that any patient that I've ever had for weight loss when I practiced as a nutritionist right up to COVID, and you end up coaching and life coaching and counselling basically, which was part of my degree. We did a bit of counselling. But not enough to do therapy. So often I will basically refer them on to a therapist or a counsellor. Yeah. But to me, weight loss all actually comes down to mental health always. Yeah. And for me as well, like I keep saying to Boss, oh my God, like I'm going to roll out of ISO. That's like my favourite thing to say at the moment, especially this week. And he's like, just stop snacking all the time and overeating and then getting a bottle of wine and da-da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, like it just needs to actually come down to a sense of self-worth. But also on the flip side of that, drop the guilt. Who cares?
Yeah.
You know, I can guarantee you when we know, okay, we've only got 2 weeks to go, everyone will tighten their belt up. Yeah, everyone will just be like, I'm going to do a few more online workouts this week. Like everyone's going to want to feel good when they get back to studios and exercising again. So I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. I would drop the guilt and know that like I'm a trained nutritionist and I'm doing the same thing. So
and that's what I love about you, Lols, because I feel like part of your charm and why you're so special and amazing in this space is that you're just so authentic. And I feel like, you know, when you hold a role like that, there is, I guess, I don't know if you feel this, but an expectation where people think that maybe, oh, you don't eat unhealthy, you know, or you don't do, you know what I mean? Like that's just, people just think that. And I feel that it's so good for you to be able to just be authentic and say, yeah, I do snack. Like I snack all the time. My favorite snack is cheese puffs. They're the worst for you.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had them before?
Yeah, I have had cheese puffs. I'm a sweet girl though.
Are you?
So for me, every time we go shopping, I'll be like, boss, can we get some marble chocolate? He's like, no. And I'm like, and then I'll gradually pull back. I was like, what about Panna ice cream? And I'm like, as healthy as I can until eventually he's like, you can have a Granny Smith apple. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, great. That's the same as chocolate.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sweet through and through. Like I was calling to my friend Bill last night and he's like, oh, I've had 3 fun-size caramello koalas. And I was like, oh, jealous. So don't worry. Like, I mean, and that's the thing I come back to, like, although I know I'm eating more than my body needs right now, I'm eating pretty darn healthy. Like I'm baking loaves and I'm, you know, making things.
I feel like sourdough is the thing of
banana bread.
This whole thing. Everybody's like starting their whole sourdough and bakery.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's so funny.
So on that topic, well, kind of segueing off from that, this is one of the topics that I feel like you and I really like to talk about, and you've spoken a lot about it, but body image, disordered eating, body dysmorphia. This is a huge, huge topic. It's very dense. It's a very dense topic, so we'll try not to get too, you know, but I do like to talk about this because I find it super fascinating. And my own experience with it is limited because I haven't personally experienced disordered eating. My experience of it is that 2 of my girlfriends, when I was growing up, they both had bulimia. They kind of, I suppose, connected on that. And so I was kind of left out of the loop a little in that sense. But as the support person, hearing and also being young, you know, too, and having the first exposure to any kind of eating disorder, they both had bulimia. So, you know, I'd hear stories about one of my girlfriends would like clog up all the drains in her house because she'd be spewing up in the sink. And my other girlfriend would, like, you know, she would do the binge eating and buy all the food and then make herself sick. And then she would go the total opposite and then be living off like Diet Coke and Minties, you know, 1 week. And then she'd binge. And so, you know, my role in that particular circle was basically to guide them again to psych, because, you know, obviously it does come back a little bit to mental health and that whole perception. So, but because you have a kind of extensive experience, personal journey that you've been working through, and you've spoken about this before, we've talked about it before. Can you kind of, for those of you who haven't heard about Lola's, you know, your journey, can you kind of take us through like what that's been like for you? Because it's not just something that you know, it's here and here, you know, you're in it or you're not. It's a journey, a process that you go through, right?
Totally. Are you still mates with those 2 girls?
No, like I've lost contact with them, and I guess I think they are, from what I see on social media, they seem to be doing okay. But that's the thing, you just never know. You don't know, you know, and so it's so prevalent.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you said the link to mental health. I think it's like 100% mental health.
Yeah.
It's usually lack of control. So it starts young. It's usually where there's a lack of control in some element of your life. And so you take control back through either food restriction or binging or purging. I was never bulimic, so I hate vomit. I
do too. Can't do it.
Mate, I can still remember the last time I had food poisoning, and I sometimes will fall asleep still remembering it. Like, it has scarred me.
Food poisoning is the worst experience ever. Oh my God. I was going to say, I went through this thing where I basically food poisoned myself. It was just food that I had at home. And I was in hospital overnight.
Yeah.
Overnight.
What
What
did you eat?
It was chicken. I can't eat chicken.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But I was, it was the worst thing ever. But continue. Yeah, the vomiting. We hate vomiting.
No. Well, even, so mine was recent. It was like about a year ago. We were in Byron Bay. I'd eaten some, this is karma for you. I'd got up early and done yoga, and then I'd gone to the buffet and eaten. And then Matt, my boyfriend, woke up and he's like, let's go out for breakfast. I was like, yeah, didn't tell him I'd have brekkie. And so I still had like brekkie lunch dinner with him. And then I was like, I don't feel so good. He's like, we've eaten the exact same thing. And I was like, not really. And had the buffet. I was so sick all night, like 10 at like so bad. Like I cannot describe. I wake up in the morning, Matt looks at me and goes, oh, that was horrific for me. And I was like, for you? I have been both ends all night long, like really like, and to the point when you get so sick that you can't, like sound sets you off, and it was the worst thing. And then I had like a social media deal at the next place we were staying, and I was like, had to put on a brave face, and I was just like holding myself together. It was and I still will think about it. Like I will still take myself back there and like be like that's how bad it was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never had that kind of purging relationship, but I've never liked, as a kid, I always have had an aversion to vomiting. And Mum said it's because she had food poisoning when she was pregnant with me. She's like, I think that's why you've got this really weird yuckness around it. Anyway, it usually is there's a sense of lacking control in some part of your life, and that was definitely something for me that was going on for me. But also for me, like I was doing morning TV segments really young, like early 20s, and I was wearing this yellow dress one day, and someone walked up to me at Param Market the same day and was like, I saw your segment. And I was like, oh, really? What did you think? And they're like, oh, great segment, but you should never wear yellow. It makes you look pudgy. And I just was like, no. So there was, and that's just like one example.
That is horrible.
Yeah, I've had heaps and heaps of stuff like that. And so that's when I kind of like went on a really like health, like I just got really extreme with my health, and then I started to really restrict. So I went from like just being wanting to lose a sneaky 5, it then kind of like snowballed. I think I got to like 47 kilos. But like, to be honest with you, and I'd want to be like really, like I go up and down now. Like I'll, if I, go on a bit of I love going on little yoga challenges and putting my mind likes clicking into like 30-day challenge, and my body will change if I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And usually when you're doing so much yoga, your food choices change too, because you want to eat a little bit lighter so that you can get into the poses better, or so that you feel good for yogas the next morning. And so you're less inclined to go for the chocolate. You're more inclined to go for the fish and veggies. So that's one thing that I've struggled with, like actually coming out of it and knowing that like I'm healthy. Like I've got quite a broad range of me being healthy, like from 55 kilos to like high 60s, I'm pretty healthy.
Yeah.
But there's a huge 10 kilo range there. And so the thing that I've always struggled with is like when I'm, doing lots of yogas and feeling great and just kind of like focusing on my fitness and my diet and in that space, like people are like, oh, you're sick again. I'm like, no, I'm just really enjoying being a health nut and I'm loving it. But then the other side as well, like no one says anything to you when you are overindulging and feeling a bit shit about yourself too. So the one thing that, and I've never really spoken about this, but one thing that I'd love to give your listeners is like health is a range. And, you can be lean and healthy, and also you can not feel lean and healthy. That's okay too. I think it's about knowing that it's okay to fluctuate and you're meant to as a woman. But I also think like do you. That's one thing COVID's taught me, like stop giving a fuck about everyone else's opinion. Just do you. And if that means you feel good doing, I know you're a Pilates girl, you feel good doing Pilates from home during COVID every day, mate, if that's going to make you feel good, go for it. If having an extra snack a day is going to make you feel good, go for it. Like, understand that healthy is not a number or a size. Healthy should be ever changing, and it should be a way that you feel. Like I remember normally when I have shoots, I kind of like go down the health nut phase, and I remember I felt so good. I felt great. I was glowing. I'm pretty sure I was just running and doing yogas and just eating really, really well. And people were like, oh, you know, you look sick, you don't look good. And I didn't look sick. I know when I look, I'm really aware. I'm very self-aware. And I remember I turned around and said, thanks, I feel great. And I think that was empowering for me because I was like, nobody else is now
can
going
tell
to,
you.
Yeah. And I think
how you feel.
As people that have had eating disorders or body dysmorphia or orthorexia, which is where you're like hyper focused on health, I think you should be able to just go, I'm going to do me, and people are always going to judge because there's a lot of bloody dingoes out there. So just do you, and who cares what health looks or feels like.
Yeah.
You don't need to.
Yeah, you decide for yourself what it means to you. Yeah, and I think that's one of the approaches that I've always taken with my clients because, working with nutrition clients as well, like you said, it does tend to always comes back to mental health. And then you're always touching on your relationship with your body, relationship with food. And the thing is, I think a lot of people think that there's one way of doing things, but the thing is, everybody is different. Your body is different. It's going to respond to foods differently. It's going to respond to different movement differently. And depending on what your goals are, it always shifts. It never is stagnant. It's a process. You're always moving depending on how you feel, what you're going for. So that just exactly, is the same mentality that I've always taken to with my body. It's like you do you.
100%.
You don't need to compare yourself to anybody else. Let them do their thing. And yes, in terms of judgment, I'm glad you kind of brought that up because I think that's one thing. I don't know, we can only speak to our experience, but that's definitely something that, working in the media, working in the entertainment industry, you are, this is from my experience, you are judged on how you look, and you're judged by other people. And dealing with that judgment is, I think, one thing that it's a definite skill. So obviously, you've figured out how to be able to shut that out and just go, look, that's your opinion, but I'm living in my body. So what do you know about that? That kind of thing. So
it's still a hard one, the judgment, though, I will tell you.
It's so hard.
I do Insta Live yoga classes and people will write, oh, you put weight on, or oh, you literally write that to me during COVID. And I'm like, for real? Thanks. I'll normally call it out and be like, excuse me. Or the one that I'm getting at the moment is you're 34, why haven't you got kids? People just write that shit to me, no problem.
Oh, my God.
On my Instagram. And I'm just like, whoa, what? Not that this is the case for me, but it has been the case for friends. What if I couldn't fall pregnant?
Yeah.
What if I was having troubles? That would be so triggering. And the judgment thing has been some days it's good and some days it's not good. I'll be honest, some days I can totally handle it and some days I can't. But judgment's such a real tricky one. And that's where I would say therapy has made me realize that usually people only put their own shit on you.
Yeah. People are only going to bring you down if they're not feeling good about themselves, totally. Because why else would you go out of your way to say something like that to somebody? And, that's the thing about also putting yourself out there on social media, in the media. You're obviously exposed to a wider audience. People have access to you. And, so through your years of work, because you've been in the media for a long time working in this space as well, have you felt pressure because of working in the media,
I've been told to get Botox. I've been told in meetings, I've had images of myself ripped up in front of me because they were considered not good images. I've been told so much stuff. But the funny thing is, getting older, you then can realize that although that might have come across as really harsh, that is old school media. That is part of it. And it's just actually a way of someone actually trying to, as messed up as it sounds, look out for you in the image that you're portraying. And so I have fought that so many times and had meetings. I remember I had a meeting once years ago. I would have been early 20s. And it was a brainstorming meeting for my career. And I had to fly to Sydney for it. And as I was on the aeroplane, I saw that Miranda Kerr had done a campaign with Qantas. And they're like, oh, what are the big dreams? What are the 5 and 10 year goals? And I was like, oh, this is going to sound really out there. I was like, but I saw Miranda Kerr had worked with Qantas on this campaign. I'm like, how cool would it be to do like a menu for Qantas or something as a nutritionist? And the response in the meeting was someone got up and stood. I was sitting, and with her finger like looked me up and down and said, babe, you're hardly a supermodel. So stuff like that is so hard to swallow.
Oh, I don't even have words to actually like compute that in my mind.
But it makes you so resilient. Like it does make you very resilient.
Yeah.
But it's usually only women too that do it. No men.
Well, this is the thing, because I wanted to highlight it because I feel, my experience has been more so. My judgment is the judgment that I get mostly is from women, and it's mostly negative, and so that I think women tend to be very hard on other women, which I wish was not the case, but the reality, my experience has definitely been that way, and obviously from your experience as well. And why do you think that happens? Why do you think it's women that do that? Because that movement that went around on IG too, which actually you did the digging about what the actual.
Oh, and you credited me so beautifully too, by the way. I was like, you little legend. The amount of people that just like takes your stuff and just posts it. You're amazing. So thank you.
I want credit where credit is due, because I know that, researching this kind of stuff, this is from my journo kind of comms background. Research that's a skill. That's a skill. And it's a skill to concisely, summarize something to get the point across. Yeah. So of course I appreciated your words. But that little thing that went around IG, women supporting women, I was like, this is great. I like the idea of this, but also, and I wanted to do a separate piece on this, but my experience is not that mostly women are supporting women and holding women up. I like the idea and I support the movement, but that has not been in reality my experience, and it sounds like it's been the same for you, right?
I think that you'll find it's a bit like what I was saying about how Corona kind of like shuffles your friends so that you know that, and you'll find you'll find there have been some friggin' amazing men, women, people in your life that are like number one cheerleaders, so believe in you and so there to support you, and some of them are women for me, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I think the women in media thing is hard because you feel very replaceable as a woman in media. And I think when you do get to a certain age, especially if you're in just the acting world, like I said this to my therapist on Tuesday, I was like, I watched a movie and I'm older than any of the females in the cast. And he's like, yeah, you need to face the fact that you will not get cast as a 20-year-old. And I was like, shit, like that's scary, like for me to feel that. So I think as women in media, we feel replaceable. Absolutely. Yeah. And like it's so easy for people to copy. That many friggin' copycats out there, it drives me insane. But like Matt calms me down. He's like, it's a compliment. And I'm like, but why did they do that?
Can't they figure out their own stuff? Yeah. I get you. I feel you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting that you are coming now into the acting space, because the thing is like, and we had a little chat about this on IG, and I was just saying, you didn't even know that I was an actor. So that is funny to start. So I've come out of my cycle of acting, right? So I've been acting for 15 years. I recently only have just essentially retired from professional acting. So, I've really taken a step back consciously away from that scene. But the awesome thing to hear about you is that you're entering into this space now. You've been studying at 16th Street. And when I heard that you were studying with Ian Sinclair, because we both have studied with him.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know Ian, he actually studied at NIDA, which is the National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney, which is basically one of the best schools in Australia for acting. He was, a director at MTC, and he's just been everywhere.
He was AD to Kate Blanchett for the Sydney Theatre Company.
That's right.
And I think he studied at RADA as well, like in London.
He did RADA. Yeah, he did all the bits and pieces. But his so I did master classes with him a few years ago and did scene study with him, and I wanted to whip this out because I knew that you would recognise this.
Yeah. He makes you do that every class.
Which I'm holding up, guys, for you listening on the podcast. It's called Actions, the Actor's Thesaurus, which is a book that we kind of use for, I guess, acting exercises that you do in class. And it's fascinating. So what I wanted to ask you is, firstly, how are you finding studying acting? That's my first question.
Okay. So this is how it came about to me, and it's so funny. It's such an interesting. So Ian is like I've had two teachers, Ian and Cody Fern, who's an Australian actor living in the US right now. In fact, anybody should watch The Assassination of Gianni Versace on Netflix. He's in it and incredible. Also in what's that really scary show on Netflix? I can't believe I'm not thinking of it. It's a Ryan Murphy. What's the show's Cody's in, boss? Oh my goodness, Matt thinks for ages. It kills me. But basically, so I have had both of them really intensely. But the reason why I started studying acting school, I actually called a different school up in Melbourne called Brave, and I called them up American Horror Story.
Oh.
I know, but it's like a cult. People probably know it listening.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I called up this school in Melbourne called Brave, and I was like, hey, I see you do a TV presenting course. I really want to do it, because I'd done a big audition for Channel 7 hosting and like being the actual TV host, which is like my ultimate dream. I'd love to be a TV host. And I fucked it up. Yeah, I couldn't read the auto cue. I was really nervous. I put all this pressure on myself. So I'd learned the auto cue off by heart. And then as soon as I got there, I was auditioning with Tim Robards, and they flipped it. So I had his lines and he had my lines. And I was like, CD Virgo was not okay with knowing my partner's lines but not mine. And so I was like, shit, I better learn this skill set. I don't have it yet. I don't know how to read an auto cue. I can just riff and do no lines and kind of thing. And this is very structured and script. And, you know, there's heaps of friggin' cameras on set. You've got like 5 cameras on set. And I was like, where do I look? And, you know, you think, the shiny red light, but like there's also 3 other cameras picking up different things. And I just wanted to understand it way more. And they were like, look, our presenting course is full. Have you thought about acting course? And I was like, do you want me to swim with sharks? No way. Anyway, so I studied at Brave for a year. And then I was like at 16th Street, because I was doing privates with their voice coach, another amazing teacher. And they're like, we want you to audition for our course. And I was like, nah. I'd done a 3-day intense workshop with Ian, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was like, oh my God, this teacher's amazing. He knows story theory, and he told the plot story of Harry Potter, which is the exact same as Star Wars, and like crazy stuff. And then I was like, oh, fuck it, should I audition or not? And I'd done these because I was studying at Brave. I had all this like these lines in my body. Like I knew all these scripts, and I was like, oh, I'll just take it in. And they're like, oh, no, you need something stronger than that. And I was like, oh, shit. So they said, like, do something from Ozark. If anyone that's seen Ozark, it's pretty darn heavy.
Yeah, it's a heavy show.
So I went in, auditioned for Ian, was shitting myself, and I just did the audition because I wanted half an hour in the room with Ian, to be honest. He's that incredible.
Yeah, he's so good. And then
I got in, and I was like, oh, shit. He's like, so I'd love to have you here. And I was like, I don't think I can stay though. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, like I'm planning to do some work in America. And he's like, look, you're in the course. And he's like, tell the girls your story and see if they'll take you. So I just pay and do term to term. And obviously because of COVID, I'm like, well, this is a gift. I just get to study extra longer because I'm obviously not going to America anytime soon. So I'm like halfway through the course. And
amazing.
And Ian is incredible. One of my favorite things he says, and that's why you do the actions book exercise. And he said, we're building your lexicon. So the way you use the English language. So you've got all these extra words for describing, and he's so smart, guys.
He's so smart. And I just want to, like, just looking at, so for example, educate, right? So you can take the word educate. If your action was to educate, there is at least 20 other words here to describe the same thing. So advise, appraise, coach, counsel, cultivate. So when you work through with Ian, you're doing these exercises and you're expanding your range, essentially, is what it is, you know.
And he goes, if your action is to educate, he'd be like, Rach, educate the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
he'll
so
make
good.
you keep going at it. And that's what I love about him. I love that his method is so sustainable. Like, I'm not pro trauma work at all, or method
100%.
acting. It's just not for me. I think I was telling you about that. But then, so on the flip side, Cody, who is very different, they're very different. Cody's work ethic is something that I love. Like, he will say, I remember first term, so we've done our last term all online, and we were studying Tennessee Williams' Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh, I love that play.
Like, all right, guys. Oh, I know. Isn't it tragically beautiful? And
oh, my goodness.
Tennessee is my favourite playwright. And he goes, all right, we're going to do some reading from the play. And we're just term 2 kids, so we're green. And he's like, stop. Like, first line, Stanley saying something to Stella, or Blanche, like, arriving in where were they? In New Orleans. Anyway, and Cody's like, stop. Where's your Southern accent? And we're like, oh, well, we haven't learnt one. We're not that far in our, like, accents are term 3 and 4. We haven't learned it. And he's like, lazy. How bad do you want this? And I was just like, oh, yeah, this is my person. Like, when someone's got that kind of work ethic.
Yeah.
And to the point now that, like, I can tell you what's written in Tennessee Williams' will. Like, that's how far I went down the rabbit hole of Tennessee Williams. And, there's something about his work ethic that I really admire, because that guy's going to make it. Like, he already has, but, like, he'll really take it. Just mark my words. And so to learn off somebody that's just that driven and determined is so inspiring for all my other parts of my life, like for writing and for any work gig that comes through. I'm like, don't be lazy, Lola. Like, and he just always says, do the work, be over-prepared, know your breath, know your body, like, all things that I now theme my yoga classes around what I learned at drama school.
Yeah. There's so much interlinking with I find with acting and technique, because I think a lot of people have this misconception about acting, thinking that what you're doing is learning to pretend to be somebody else, you know, but that's from the outset, you know, if you haven't studied acting before. But, you know, one of the things that you learn when you are an actor is you're breaking down being a human, essentially, and looking at it. What are the different human behavior? So, you know, the thing that I found about it that I loved more so than, you know, being in front of which is great, being in front of the camera, learning lines, doing the thing. I loved learning about human behavior. I loved learning more about myself as a person, because when you understand those different parts of yourself, you can then take those and then be that other person that you're meant to be in that play, in that film, or whatever. But just unpacking, it's unpacking human behavior, and that to me is just so fascinating.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, there's this layer that I didn't know was ever a part of it, where you're honouring an author, like Tennessee Williams, like, that guy, like, basically bleeds his heart onto a page. And when you get to know him and then you read about the characters, like, he'll always write about childless women. Always. That's like his go-to. But it's a common thread. Or he'll write about devilishly handsome men and aging women who have lost, like, you know, the Southern Belle is kind of like his famous Blanche character. And he'll write this, like, torment, this pain. And when you learn about him, the writer, you're like, it makes sense. Like, this is what he's been through. Yeah,
it's a reflection of his experience, essentially. I think that's one thing that Ian has been so good to you know, kind of give insight to is understanding the author and paying tribute to the writer, because you are essentially just a vehicle through which this person's story is being told. So you are, you know, and again, that's another perception that people might have about being an actor, is like, it's all very, and it can be, you know, very narcissistic and all about the me, center of attention. But the craft of acting and understanding that is, you are actually just a piece in a much bigger picture. You're there to tell a story, and the story has been written by an author. And like you said, when you look at the body of work of Tennessee Williams, you can see the threads that are common with his work. So therefore, if you get to know the author, you understand his work so much better. You understand the story that he's trying to tell. And that, like,
Totally.
that's the juicy part of acting, you know, like when you're in it, that's the passion, that's where it is. So I'm so excited that you're like into it and learning from Ian. And you didn't you mention that you kind of had a thing, you did this thing with Deborah Lee Finesse and Hugh Jackman was like in the background or something?
We were doing a Zoom class.
Yeah.
We were doing a Zoom class exactly like this, but there was like, I don't know, 13 of us little. And so we had like Deb Lee Finesse for like an hour. I asked a question. I like plucked up the courage and I was like, but she's very esoteric. Like she'll be like, she's very like, you can tell she's studied Buddhism and whatnot. And anyway, and she's like, oh, thanks guys. I've just got someone to say hi to you. And he's like, hi guys. And I was like, didn't have time to call Matt. I wanted to call Boss over and be like, Matt, quick. But yeah, it kind of gave me a little spring in my step. I've watched a fair bit of his stuff. He's very, very humble and yeah, I think that's why I'm really loving Ian and I'm really enjoying his method because, yeah, I don't know, like you were saying, like he honors, the writer and stuff, but also he helps you learn and understand about yourself. So as a human, you come out going, because I keep going to my therapist like, oh God, what if I don't act? And he's like, look how much you're learning for yourself, you know.
100%. That's the one thing when I look back on all the, you know, the study that I did, because I went to university. I did a drama degree. Went to LA, studied there.
Where'd you go?
I did drama at Deakin. And then I went over to LA and studied at the Meisner Center, did Meisner for quite a little bit, which is, I love the Meisner style for those of you listening who don't, I mean, there's no point really going into the technique, but it's a strain of method acting, but it doesn't necessarily need you to go into your traumas. It's more about creating imaginary circumstances. So you use that as your fuel to move forward as your motivation, which is kind of similar to Ian's approach, which is I think why I've never enjoyed, you know, using acting as like, oh, I want to go into my pain, and that's not the purpose of it, you know. You can create that, and that's why your mind is so amazing to be able to use your imagination to do those things. But one of the things that I've taken from all my acting experience and my work in that field is more learning about who I am and the self-awareness. And that's really, you know, when I look back, I think that is the greatest thing that acting has taught me. But also on top of that, and you mentioned this before, dealing with rejection, dealing with failure, and dealing with fear. These are the things that acting has taught me how to deal with really well, and to the point where it doesn't cripple me from moving forward in any area, because I've learned so much when you're an actor, you get rejected more than you get you're going to get a no 100 times more than you get a yes, right? Yeah. If you're filming something or if you're on the stage, you are automatically putting yourself in a position where you are probably going to fuck up. That's just what's going to happen. And you've got to be okay with that, with people watching you. So there's an element of leaving that self-consciousness behind as an actor, to not care what you look like to other people, because you are in service of the work rather than of yourself, what you look like, how, you know, if you're really, you know, passionate about the work, that's what it is. You're there to serve the work. And so what you look like doesn't matter. Do your ugly cry, do your, you know, whatever it is, that's just what is going to come out in the moment. And so you're going to be okay with that, you know. But those things that I've just mentioned, like failure, rejection, fear, I know you like to talk about that kind of stuff too, because your podcast, Fearlessly Failing, all about failure and fucking up, which I love. I also love to talk about this topic too, because it's so important, I think, for people to know that it's okay to fail. It's okay to be rejected. It's okay to be scared. Things that often stop us from doing things that we really, you know, pursue things that we want to do in life, relationships, all those kinds of things. So I really I'm curious to know what your greatest failure has been.
So many, mate. So many. I had a meeting yesterday and they brought up another failure and I was like, oh, shit, I hadn't thought about that one. I mean, the big one was I brought out a diet plan with a really controversial name.
I remember that. Yeah.
Stop Being a Fat Bitch. And the reason why it was called that was that's what the way that I spoke to myself. I remember my business partner and roommate at the time said, what are we going to call it? We can't call it 4-week diet plan, Lola's Detox. And I just polished up a whole family-sized block of Cadbury's Marvelous Creation. And I said, I wish I could say stop being a fat bitch because that's the way I'm talking to myself. And he said, we need to shine a light on the way women speak to themselves. This is a great way to do it. So it was called Stop Being a Fat Bitch, Change Your Mental Dialogue, Change Your Life.
Yep.
Obviously no one saw that bit, the subtitle. But, yeah, it was a real fuck-up career-wise. It was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I'm still to this day, I'll always be sorry for offending so many women. But the flip side of that was it became a humongous lesson. Like my audience or community that are, you know, meant to be on my side, I thought started a hashtag Bin the Berry, like photos of my books in bins. You know, other big health influencers used it to like lift their own gain and were putting out posts like how dare women not support women, and I'm just like fuck. So it just like, and the Daily Telegraph was like career suicide, Current Affair was running it, and then I got like legally gagged. Like it was just really full on, and I had a meeting, like a business meeting, like a month later, and I was like, guys, like I was flying blind. Like I could tell you on one hand who had my back. So from that perspective, the way you just spoke about how acting taught you to handle rejection, that experience taught me how to have my own back and to know that it's okay to fuck up because we all do. That's part of the human experience.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I do remember that moment because you were doing streams as well afterwards because there was so much backlash on that, and but I feel like you handled it so well, and like because that's, I mean, that was your truth, you know. That's and I think some of the thing is that sometimes people don't want to admit that that's what they say to themselves too. You know, so that's
I mean, it is confronting.
It's confronting, and that's what stirs that kind of reaction. And you know, unfortunately, you know, it's hard. It's hard when you're in this role where it's so evident when you fuck up. Do you know what I mean? Where that response is so immediate. But obviously, it's been a learning experience. What about rejections? Do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, like up until meeting the boss, Matt, like I really struggled with heart rejection, like matters of the heart rejection. And when I say rejection, like being in a relationship that fucked up and like, and where I'd feel that real, I remember I broke up with someone and it was a total douchebag. But I remember standing on his front doorstep and I said, I've never felt like I'm a pebble in someone's shoe. And I was like, but hang on, I've let myself get to that stage in the relationship. Sure, he's got a slew of problems and issues and whatnot. Hopefully that they've been sorted out now. But at the time, it was harrowing for me, and that was probably the biggest gift because it was that breakup that got me to see a therapist, like that breakup, because there was no closure. There was no, like when I said, you know, I can't be with someone that doesn't love me. I think he just like sniffed his nose, wiped his face and kind of like he was just gross, like horrible person. And I couldn't close that. I had no, like that was what I was trying to do. I was like, let me know what's happened so that I can process, and it wouldn't happen. So that was what got me to see a therapist.
Yeah.
How lucky am I?
Yeah.
But yeah, that used to be my pitfall, would be like I'd date someone that was like so great on paper, but then, and it was the same experience for me where it was great, and then these guys would have really deep-seated mental issues, whether it be bipolar, whether it be depression underneath, like, and it wouldn't come out until, you know, 3 months in, and you'd be like, oh shit. And most guys don't. A lot of guys are, I should say not most, but a lot aren't super great with emotion. Like, and so when I started dating Matt, boss, I was like, I'm nipping this in the bud. So second second date, I was like, you need to know I have a therapist. And he said, I find that so attractive. I have one too.
Oh, good.
And so
yeah.
I think when you're constantly working on yourselves, like we work really on having no expectation of one another. It's like our mantra, which sounds really weird, but it is so empowering.
It's freeing.
To live with a teammate. Yeah, it feels like you're with a teammate as opposed to I want this thing from you and you want this thing from me. And so, yeah, for me, rejection of heart was something that all of my 20s, that was my consistent lesson of just like kind of like people that would kind of like just I'd get so hurt. And it was also a reflection of I had very low self-worth as well. So it was all me as well.
But isn't it? It's been so. Even just asking you the question and you being able to reflect back on that, it's now brought you to this relationship. So I suppose
Totally.
all of those experiences have now taught you what you need to look for. I guess in a relationship.
Totally.
Yeah.
I always say to Matt, like I'm so grateful for all those other experiences because they brought me to him, who's like so like kind and gentle and deep and but also works on himself constantly. We both work on ourselves constantly, and I think that if you can meet someone that's working on themselves, sky's the limit for you too.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely know that with my partners, that's the thing that I have to have is someone who is who has a desire to grow, because we essentially we are all but consciously growing. You're growing whether you're conscious of it or not, but actually placing conscious awareness on growing yourself as a human is very attractive quality, for anybody, So, for people who maybe struggle, I guess, with becoming mates with failure and rejection and that kind of thing, because you've done a lot of work, on yourself and through personal growth and whatnot. So it's one of those things where you've been able to look at those failures and rejections and turn them into lessons essentially and take them forward moving forward. But for people who maybe are struggling more with those things, what kind of advice or suggestions would you give them to help them transform their perspective on that, I guess?
I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but it would be therapy, definitely, because therapy is non-biased and you can really unpack it with a clear lens. When you're just in it, like that breakup I told you about, the people in the shoe one, I sat in that pain for 3 months and I couldn't understand why, like, the day after he went to a big wedding and just got blind and had fun. Like, I couldn't understand that, like, started dating someone. I just couldn't grapple with it. I was getting so offended. Had nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do with me. And I was a dick for even thinking it should have anything to do with me. And so the second I saw a therapist, my therapist sat me down. He goes, "How long do you want to date narcissists for, Lola? Because there's a pattern here."
Right.
And like it took me back. And he's like, "You've got these guys are treating you the same way and making you feel like the victim." And so it was only through therapy that I could break that cycle.
Yeah, to help you, I guess, take a step out of it and look at it from a different perspective. Yeah.
Therapy. I can't speak highly enough.
Yeah. And two, I feel like, for those of you who haven't been to a therapist or, because there is a stigma around therapy.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's this big stigma like, oh, you see a therapist, like there's something wrong with you or something like that. And, my view on therapy is that you're looking after your health, your mental health. This is an act of self-love for you. You're taking care of your mind, your perceptions, helping you unpack things, helping you unpack your emotions. And I think for me, I've definitely found it really valuable going through tough times, and being able to frame it that way for yourself, I think is important too, is to not judge yourself for going to therapy, essentially. It's
totally. I had the stigma for 3 years. My best friend, Andrea, was like, "There's nothing wrong with seeing one." She tried for 10 years. Not 10 years, sorry, for 3 years. She was like, "I think you need to see one for the eating disorder stuff, for the heartbreak stuff. I just think you need to see one." And I was like, no. Literally, she'd just be like, "I reckon, 3 years over." And because I'd always kind of get myself out of it, find this good place, and then drop again. And and it took a long time. And I had the stigma. I was like, I see it as a weakness. Now I see it as like a superpower.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and know that it's not always it takes a few fits. Like I had a different therapist in Sydney to work through just eating disorder stuff, and it wasn't the right, she was a wonderful person and lovely, but it wasn't the right fit for me. Like I do really well with a strong male because I'm so hard on myself. I want a therapist that can be like, how long do you want to be silly and cry for?
Yeah.
He can say that to me because he's seen me cry and been there for me so many times where I've just cried the whole session.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, what are you doing? Like this Tuesday I was like, oh my God, I keep dreaming of snakes. I keep dreaming I'm pregnant, all these things. And he's like, okay, I'll tell you what's going on right now. He's like, you are fearing that your life's slipping through your fingers and you're letting it go. And I go, absolutely. I was like, you've hit the nail on the head. He goes, all right, let's get honest. You're not going to get acting roles as a 20-year-old. It's just not going to happen. And, you know, and I was like, oh, yep. But I responded so well to this like matter of fact. And he's like, start changing the narration. He's like, the fact you're fearing your age and your chance to be a mum. He's like, you're so healthy. We can have this discussion at 40. He's like, stop putting this pressure on yourself. He's like, you're just building all this up. And I just think having a therapist is a superpower. It really is, for career, for love, for success, for life, superpower.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the big message, guys. Make sure you get a therapist. You don't have to be going through shit too, you know. Like it's nice to just have a little top up every now and then. You don't have to, and you can, you know, kind of navigate that relationship how you see fit depending on what's going on in your life. It doesn't have to be like a weekly thing. It doesn't have to be. It's you do you. That's the whole, I guess, message of this whole thing. You do you. Whatever works for you, right?
And remember, if you go for when something's shit like a breakup, which is what I did, it took us 3 sessions to literally wrap that up, being honest. And I said, can I keep seeing you? And he said, yeah, my goal is to get you bulletproof. And I think that you need to know that when you're good and think, I don't need a session, that's when you get to do the work. That's when you're good to uncover shit. Yeah. Because when you're not good and you just need help to process, it's almost like you're dealing with the gunk on top. Yeah. But when you're clear and feeling happy and you see a therapist, then you're going to process like shit that you held on to when you were 8 years old. Yeah, 100%. It's like going through the layers. Once you're through the shit, then you get to the real stuff underneath. Basically, that's what we're going for. Yeah, big time. Big time.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me, lovely. I feel like this has been such a long-awaited chat, and I knew that we would have such a good chat about all these different amazing things. So, thank you for being on the show.
I've never talked about acting school before, so that's so exciting.
I mean, we could talk about that forever. We could literally have a whole episode dedicated just to acting, I feel. So we can,
and I'll send you I interviewed Ian for my pod.
Oh, did you? Oh my God, that would have been amazing.
I'll send it to you. You'll tell I'm like fangirling the whole time.
I look forward to listening to it. So guys, you can find Lols on IG at Yummo Lola Berry, also at Lola Coffee. She also has a podcast, Fearlessly Failing, and you can find that wherever you listen to your podcast. So if you did enjoy this little chat skis, which I'm sure you did, make sure you screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories. And thank you again so much for joining me, lovely Lola, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Rach Active Podcast.